My wife mocked me to her friends, saying he's awful in bed, but backfired when her best friend laughed and said, actually, he's amazing. And that single moment detonated the life I thought I had, the marriage I thought I understood, and the version of myself I'd been sleepwalking through for 4 years. I didn't plan for it to happen that way, not exactly, but when it did, I didn't flinch. I let the truth burn everything down. I need to tell you how we got there. Because trust me, that moment wasn't the beginning. It was the explosion at the end of a 6-month countdown that my wife, Megan, accidentally started the afternoon I discovered she'd been cheating on me with her co-worker. I just made sure the fireworks went off in the right direction. So, picture this. Our apartment absolutely spotless, candles lit, catered dinner on the table. Everyone dressed in their we're doing well in life outfits, and Megan in full performance mode. It was supposed to be an anniversary dinner with 5 couples from her office. People I barely knew and honestly didn't care to know. Megan had spent weeks hyping it up, like it was the social event of the season. She kept saying things like, everyone needs to see how perfect our place looks, or it'll be good for them to see we're solid. That last one should have been my red flag, but I ignored it. Funny how you only understand the signs in reverse. The night started normal enough. Wine, small talk, Megan doing that loud laugh she reserves for situations where she wants to be admired. I stayed in my usual role, the quiet husband who keeps things running smoothly. But about an hour in, after her second big glass of wine, I saw it happen. That shift in her eyes, that restless spark that meant you wanted to be the center of attention. And that's when everything started unraveling. Someone made a harmless joke about marriage routines, and Megan pounced like she'd been waiting for an opening. She smirked, nudged one of her friends, and said loud enough for the room to hear, "Oh, trust me, routine is exactly the problem at home. Ben treats intimacy like a chore chart." A few awkward chuckles. Someone tried to move the conversation along, but she wasn't done. "He's awful in bed," she announced, lifting her glass like she was giving a toast. I swear, being with him feels like following an IKEA manual. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3, done. 0 passion, 0 heat. Honestly, if I set a timer, I don't think he would even notice. The room went dead quiet. I felt heat crawl up my neck, but stayed perfectly still, because I already knew. I had known for 6 months. I'd already seen the messages, the photos, the hotel receipts. I'd already met with the lawyer. I'd already moved my money, separated my accounts, secured everything that was mine. I'd already built a case so airtight, she wouldn't even be able to breathe through it. And I'd already formed an alliance she would never have expected. That's when it happened. The moment Megan ruined her own life. Her best friend, Heather, who had been sitting quietly, watching Megan with this strange, almost pitying expression, tilted her head, smirked just slightly, and said, "That's interesting, Meg, because actually he's amazing." The silence that followed was suffocating. Every single person froze. Megan's smile collapsed. She blinked fast, like her brain couldn't understand the words she'd just heard. "What?" she whispered. Heather folded her arms, leaned back, and said it louder this time. "Ben is amazing. Truly, one of the most attentive partners I've ever been with. If a soul could leave a body, Megan's did right there." She turned bone white. The room exploded into whispers and shifting and shocked stares. One woman dropped her fork. One guy suddenly found the floor fascinating. Megan kept saying, "What? What? What?" like a corrupted audio file. But me? I stayed calm. Because we planned this. Not because Heather and I had actually slept together. We hadn't. But because Heather wanted revenge too. 2 months earlier, she'd found out Megan had been using her as an alibi to cheat. Megan had dragged her name into lies, used her as cover, and worst of all, mocked her behind her back. And Heather, well, she had her own history with Megan's affair partner. One night happy hour. One too many drinks. One very stupid decision she regretted deeply. A decision Megan had weaponized behind her back for months. So when Heather asked me to meet her for coffee, she told me everything. Everything Megan had said about me. Everything Jared, the affair partner, had said. Everything the office knew. And she told me something else too. something brutal and honest, that she hated being dragged into Megan's mess, and she wanted to help me destroy the illusion Megan lived in. And so we devised a plan. No affair, no real cheating. Just a perfect bombshell to crack Megan's image in half at the exact moment she tried to humiliate me publicly. And it worked. That dinner turned into absolute chaos. People grabbing purses, people avoiding eye contact, people escaping as fast as they could. Megan kept pacing, frantic, shouting, "Heather, what are you talking about?" And Heather just said, "Maybe you shouldn't talk about your husband like he's a joke, especially when you've been cheating on him for half a year." Boom. Dead silence again. Megan looked at me then, eyes huge, full of panic. "Ben," she whispered, Please tell me she's lying." I didn't. I just pulled out my phone, opened the folder of screenshots, and said, "Why don't you tell them?" And I started reading. Not all of it, just enough. Enough to show her laughing about how easy it was to lie to me. Enough to show her mocking me in ways that sliced deep even when I'd already read them 100 times. Enough to show she was planning to divorce me after my promotion went through so she could maximize her financial gain. And then I read the message that ruined her completely. "Don't worry, babe. Once Ben gets the senior position next month, I'll finally be done with him." One woman gasped. Someone else muttered, "Jesus Christ." A guy shook his head and said under his breath, "That's cold." Megan dropped onto the couch, sobbing, shaking her head over and over. But I wasn't done. I pulled out the manila envelope, laid it on the coffee table, and said softly, "These are divorce papers. You can read them after everyone leaves." She stared at it like it might bite her. "Ben, please don't do this. I made a mistake. We can fix this. You love me. You love what I provided." I said, "Not me," and I walked away. Heather left last, pausing the doorway long enough to say, "Meg, I hope you learned something from this. But honestly, I doubt you will." Megan moved out within a week because legally the apartment was mine. It had been purchased years before we met. She tried everything, crying, begging, threatening, screaming, but the law was the law and the evidence was undeniable. Her job didn't survive the fallout either. HR got the screenshots. So did Jared's wife. It spread through their office so fast it practically caught fire. They both got fired for violating workplace conduct. Jared's wife divorced him within a month. Megan tried staying with friends, but nobody wanted to be associated with the drama. Eventually, she moved back in with her parents 2 states away. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, she and Heather both showed up at my apartment, arguing with each other in the hallway like 2 reality TV contestants who'd just been told the cameras were still rolling. I didn't even open the door all the way, just enough to tell them both to leave before I called the police. They kept arguing all the way to the elevator. I watched pizza commercials while hearing them faintly scream through the building's acoustics. It was absurd, and honestly, beautifully ironic. The woman who once mocked me for being boring had managed to turn her whole life into a circus. And I've never been calmer. Therapy helped. My promotion finally went through. And 2 months after the divorce, I met someone at a tech conference who looked at me like I was embarrassing or routine or disposable. She looked at me like I was a person worth knowing. It's strange, the things you start to appreciate when you realize someone used to love you only for the things you could give them. Sometimes late at night, I think about that dinner, how humiliating it should have been, how devastating it should have felt. But weirdly, I'm grateful for it. Megan tried to make a joke at my expense. Instead, it became the funeral of her own lies. And honestly, karma didn't just knock on her door. It moved in, redecorated, and refused to leave. And I slept better the night she left than I had in years.